Truex Jr. retired from full-time NASCAR racing at the end of 2024, but could run part-time with 2311 in 2025, and Kyle Busch confirms that he'll return to Truex Racing in 2025. What's going, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're going to start to talk about Ryan Blaney. As of Ryan Blaney picking up the win earlier this evening, Iowa Speedway becomes the first driver to win in all three series at Iowa. He won in the NASCAR Truck Series back in 2012, which is his first win in the top three series. I think he won Xfinity back in 2014 or 2015, and now has won the inaugural Cup Series race at Iowa. It's a very solid race overall, and it's pretty cool to see Ryan Blaney become the first driver to win all three series at this racetrack. Congratulations to Ryan Blaney on being able to accomplish that. It's a pretty big accomplishment overall, to be honest. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Eric Brennan. Now, Eric Brennan was the lead commentator for the ARCA race at Iowa Speedway, which was the first race of the weekend, and Eric Brennan did an absolute amazing and solid job on Friday night. He did a fantastic job calling. He brought a lot of energy to the broadcast booth. This has been a big thing that Fox has been missing over the course of the last few years, is what he brought, the energy. I think Eric Brennan is one of the best commentators coming up, and I think he should be full-time in the Truck Series booth in 2025. And honestly, for the rest of the year, he should be in the Truck Series booth. And then eventually, in the next couple years, once Mike Joy does retire, I know Adam Alexander is good, but there's rumors that Adam Alexander is going to be transitioning over to the IndyCar broadcast going forward. So if I'm Fox, I'm looking to bring Eric Brennan in full-time because he's an excellent commentator. He did an excellent job, and I thought his coverage was absolutely excellent on Friday night, which was one of the best Fox coverages I've seen so far in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kentucky Speedway. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Friday that SMI just pulled out of Kentucky and took the race back to Atlanta. And they really want to come back. Obviously, this comes from, I think, the KentuckyLine.com, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly the website it comes from. But obviously, NASCAR has not raced at Kentucky since 2020. Then they went to Atlanta and re-added a second date in 2021. A big reason for that is because of what happened, obviously, back in 2021 with the pandemic, among other things, was a big reason they lost the date. But obviously, the next-gen car did not race very well on mile-and-a-half tracks. Granted, it did have a very, very solid race in 2020 at the end, but let's be real, no one remembers the race except the finish one in 2019 where Kurt Busch beat his brother Kyle. And then, of course, the race where Cole Custer got his first and only Cup win up to this point, though he could win next year of him likely going full-time. I don't want Kentucky back on the schedule. I think the racing is going to be pretty subpar and lackluster. I get why they don't want to bring it back because I don't think the racing is going to be good overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2024 24 Hours of Le Mans. While you had the NASCAR Cup Series race earlier this evening, before that you had the 2024 24 Hours of Le Mans. You had a lot of safety car periods in this race, and for the second straight year, Ferrari has gone back-to-back in this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. There was some controversy surrounding this 50 car with the car window coming open and the door coming open near the end of the race where they come back down pit road. The 51 car had trouble. Alpine had some engine failures, and there was a lot of cars that crashed out because of rain. It came down to the Ferrari 50 car and also the number 7 Toyota Gazoo Racing Toyota. It's a shame to see now Toyota get the win, but it's really cool to see Ferrari go back-to-back. I know it's going to be controversial. It was a big win for them. And LMP2, United Autosport, which is owned by Zach Brown and also owns McLaren, they went to victory lane, and also Nolan Siegel became one of the youngest winners, I think, in any class. Congratulations once again, though, to Ferrari on picking up the win in the victory in this year's 24 Hours Le Mans. They earned it and deserved it, in my honest opinion. Congratulations, Ferrari, on being this year's champion of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the World Endurance Championship, as the 2025 World Endurance Championship schedule has been revealed. The season's going to kick off for the Qatar 16-12 kilometer race on February 28th. Then they'll have the Imola 6 hours, I believe, on April 20th, which is my mom and dad's anniversary. Then you'll have the Spa 6 hours on May the 10th. Then you have Le Mans 24 hours on June 14th to 15th, which will have conflict with the F1 series and also the IndyCar series, because with IndyCar going to Gateway. Then you have the Sao Paulo 6 hours on July 13th. Then you have the Coda 6 hours on September 7th. Then you have the Fuji 6 to 8 hours on September 28th. And the season will end in Bahrain on November 8th. Only 8 races in 2024. The season will kick off in Qatar. It's going to be a very long season, but at same token, same time, with it being February 28th, it's not that bad, all things considered. I'm really looking forward to Le Mans next year. I really hope we can see some NASCAR crossover in 2025 if schedules can align, though I do think NASCAR will be going on at the time unless they do have an off week. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think the schedule is very solid looking for next year in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the super license system. As it was announced on Friday morning that the FIA has lowered the super license age to 17 years old. This is in hopes that when Kimi Antonelli is able to make his Formula One start and debut with Mercedes, he'll get the chance and opportunity. Kimi Antonelli gets an exception because of Toto Wolff. Obviously, this has caused a lot of uproar and controversy in the F1 world, and it's for good reason. Look, Colin Herta was denied a super license at 22. And you're telling me you're going to lower the age of the super license 17. Kimi Antonelli has not scored a single podium in Formula 2. And because he has the super license points, he's eligible to run potentially in Formula 1. It's insane to me. And Max Verstappen, don't get me wrong, was allowed at 16 or 17, but he probably should not have been allowed in Formula 1 at the time either, despite the talent he brings. To me, I just don't completely understand it. I don't get it. It sounds like they're going against Americans at this point. The super license system is completely busted. IndyCar Championship gets you 40 points. Alex Post should be in F1 at this point, how good he's been, and not Kimi Antonelli. It's a shame how the F1 super license system works. I'm not a fan of it. And once again, it's just playing to Toto Wolff's strength, which is giving him a chance to basically get anyone he wants, which honestly, I'm not a big fan overall of it, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we got a couple Kyle Busch stories we're going to talk about in today's episode, which also kind of trails back to the Truex Jr. announcement of him retiring. But Kyle Busch reveals that he could have joined Chance 2 Motorsports as a teammate to Truex Jr. back in 2004. However, when it got the chance and opportunity to drive the 5-car for Hendrick Motorsports in the 2004 season in Xfinity when Brian Figures moved up to the Cup Series in 2004 full-time, Kyle Busch was given the chance and opportunity to run full-time. Could you imagine Kyle Busch and Truex Jr. being on the same team in Xfinity? Because remember, that same year, Truex Jr. went on to win the NASCAR Xfinity Series title. And Kyle Busch finished in a runner position in second place and nearly had a chance to win the title. Then the next year in 2005, he went up the Cup with Hendrick, and he's become one of the most successful drivers in Cup Series history. Same thing goes for Truex Jr. He became very successful. We'll talk about his retirement announcement here in just a little bit. But it's really interesting to see that Kyle Busch could have joined Chance 2 Motorsports and could have been teammates of Truex Jr. Both guys being on the same team would have been definitely very interesting and been something really, really cool and fun to look at. It had been a very big what-if story. I would love to see Kyle Busch drive. What if he owned a Truck Series team at any point? What if he stayed with Chevrolet his whole entire career? That could have been something to watch for, and he could have still ended up in Hendrick, but also could have maybe gone to Gibbs, and they could have stayed with Chevrolet. And if Toyota decided to make the move. Nonetheless, very interesting for sure, and it's kind of a cool hypothetical thing that Kyle Busch could have joined Chance 2 Motorsports in the future or back in 2004. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the number 8 trademark. As it was reported by Joey Tarantamella that the number 8 trademark has officially been canceled as of June 15th, meaning that the number 8 trademark is officially free from Teresa Earnhardt. It's expected that Dale Earnhardt Jr. and DEI Holdings or DEJ Holdings are going to go after that trademark and likely will be granted that by sometime in 2025. This is absolutely huge. Teresa has held that 8 trademark hostage for a very long time. They basically got threatened legal action for many years. Dale Jr. got threatened legal action. His family got threatened legal action. Despite her not being part of the family originally and marrying into it, she's been trying to hold this legal action for many, many years. And it's been a big bubble and grind since all the way back 2007 when Jr. left DEI at the end of that year to go to Hendrick Motorsports. They tried to collect that 8 car back in 2008 to go there, but Teresa did not budge. The fact that the 8 trademark is finally free is honestly amazing and absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for it and what kind of comes into play for the 8 trademark going forward. But it's really awesome and great to see that the 8 trademark has finally been canceled and Dale Earnhardt Jr. can now go after the trademark. It's really excellent stuff overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dennison versus Chris Wright. Now, if you've been on Twitter and on social media over the course of the last day or two, you saw what happened. So let's go back to the ARCA race. Near the end of the ARCA race, with about 25 laps to go in the race, there was pretty much straightforward. But coming to the end of the race, Chris Wright and Dennison had contact. Now, Cody was around 2 or 3 laps down in the race, unfortunately, while Chris Wright was running in 34th position at the time. Now, Chris Wright made a mistake, got loose, and went up the racetrack and got into Cody, unfortunately. Now, after the race, Cody made some interesting comments toward Chris Wright, where he basically said, I don't usually see him all the time. I've seen it that he wrecks quite a bit. Chris Wright then spoke a little bit later to the media, and he actually apologized and took accountability and responsibility. But later that evening, or going into the next day, Chris Wright's brother, Kevin Wright, went on social media trying to defend his brother, Chris. And he got a lot of backlash for this, even with Cody, also known as Camelcast or Camelot on Twitter. He basically went on to go after him and they said, your brother took accountability for the incident, why don't you? I don't like it when families try to get involved in fights and controversies, especially when the fact that Chris took responsibility for the incident. He's not been getting involved in any of this controversy at all. I think that Chris Wright's brother should learn a lot better. Every time I've seen Chris Wright behind the wheel of a car, I've seen that car crash every single time or not run well, and it's off the pace. He had a good run going. He made a mistake and crashed Cody, especially for a team that's not really the fastest. They've got the legacy engines. Meanwhile, you've got the Ilmore engines, which are the fastest engines in the series, and you're one of the top tier organizations. You get the best equipment, you should be performing a lot better, and you can't be getting involved in wrecks. I completely understand Cody's frustration. It's completely understandable and justified, and I don't understand why Chris Wright's brother decided to get involved in this when he had no reason to be getting involved in this, in my opinion. I think it's ridiculous he got involved, but that is just my honest opinion on the situation. It's kind of funny that Dennison, also known as Camelot, was able to defend himself in a pretty big way, especially with the lack of stats that Chris Wright has shown over the many years he's been in the sport. He's been in the sport for a long time and has shown no improvement. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Zilisch versus William Swatz. Now, if you watched the ARCA race, you saw the really great or kind of not so great battle between Zilisch and William Swatz. Now, coming into this race, these two have a little bit of history. Near the end of the ARCA race at Dover, they both were battling really hard for the win and the victory, and Connor got into William and unfortunately crashed William out. Now, William handled that with a lot of maturity and a lot of class and didn't really try to do a bunch of name gaming. But if you watch this race at Iowa, you saw the contact and the constant running into him. He runs at him 3 or 4 times, once down the back straightaway, once down the front straightaway, and tries to basically take his tire off and tries to wreck him. After the race, William Swatz spoke to the media, and he said that he was really not happy with Connor, and he said he felt like he lost a lot of respect because apparently he jumped the restart, which if you look at the replay, Zilisch did not jump one of the restarts. I don't understand why Williams upset about that. Look, both drivers are very, very talented, and they're both got a lot of gifts. When you look at racecraft and talent-wise, I think Zilisch is a much more talented driver than William Swatz. I get people have praised William Swatz for this, but Zilisch has won in the LMP2 class in both Sebring and the Rolls 24. And he's leading the championship in ARCA East right now by about 7 or 8 points because he's won 2 or 3 of those races. He's won 2 of his 3 ARCA starts. William Swatz, meanwhile, in 15 starts in ARCA, only has 5 wins. Who has a better winning percentage? Zilisch. And I think Zilisch is going to go a lot farther. And because we haven't seen William do much in trucks this year. I know a truck is different than a car, but William isn't one of the best cars in ARCA. If arguably the best car, in my opinion, you should be winning championships and winning races. He's clearly not done that, unfortunately, though the 18 car has not won a lot this year, but William only has 1 win. Meanwhile, Zilisch has 2, which is the most, I think, of anybody so far this year. I think Connor's not going to get used to it in the future. I think it's cool to see a rivalry. I think they'll probably talk about it because I know Connor said he was going to talk to him about the situation. Personally, I don't think Connor should talk to him. I think she just kind of not worry about him, not pay attention, and kind of brush it off. Because personally, in my honest opinion, I don't think Connor did anything wrong. There's just hard racing. I don't understand why William Swatz is mad about the incident, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Riley Herbst versus Sam Mayer. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race yesterday, you saw the incident between Riley Herbst and Sam Mayer. Coming to the end of the race at the end of stage number 2, Sam Mayer sent it really hard and passed Riley Herbst and kind of tried to do a slide job on Riley Herbst for about 8th or 9th position on the racetrack. Kind of sent it in there too hard, and they both lost a little bit of ground and positions. On one of the late race restarts, Riley Herbst was not very happy about him trying to pass him near the end of that, and Sam Mayer got after the race, after going eventually and picking up a second win of the 2024 season. Riley Herbst went up and gave him contact and cut down his tire. Riley Herbst was justifiably or maybe unjustifiably upset with the situation. He said he wasn't mad about how he was raced. He thought he was raced pretty fair and square. He just did not like what Sam Mayer had done on one of the previous restarts where he kind of doored him a little bit. Again, I think that's just hard racing going for a win. I get Riley's upset because he hasn't won a race so far this year, which I'd be frustrated and pissed off too if I'm still looking for my first win this year. But at the same time, I think Riley Herbst needs to focus, especially on his future, because we don't know what his future is going to look like past this year. I think Riley has every right to be upset and frustrated, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, he needs to focus on other things. Sam kind of brushed it off. He didn't understand why Riley ran under the caution. I didn't understand that either after the race concluded. I thought it was pretty unjustified, to be honest, and a little childish on his end. And nonetheless, it's interesting to see these guys have raced against each other for many years, and they've been racing against each other moving up through the ranks for a very long time. Very interesting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Keselowski. Now, Brad Keselowski was interviewed by the media, and he says after this season, he will be the second oldest full-time driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. And basically, it was asked, how long are you going to be racing in the NASCAR Cup Series as a driver/owner? Well, Brad Keselowski said he's not planning to retire anytime soon. It isn't planning to retire from NASCAR as a driver for a while. Brad Keselowski becomes only the second driver to be 40 years old. Next year, Kyle Busch will turn 40 in May, but Brad Keselowski is only 40 years old. But like I mentioned and said a second ago, he'll be the second oldest full-time driver behind Denny Hamlin, who of course will be 45 at the end of next season. Look, Brad Keselowski is still performing at the top of his game. He is currently, I think, in the top 10 in the regular season point standings, and I feel like Brad Keselowski is starting to get better on a week-by-week basis. The performance is really starting to show up, and I think Brad Keselowski has a really good chance and opportunity to win the championship this year because RFK is getting a lot faster. Look at the performance and speed Brad has had. And unless Brad starts dropping off in performance in the near future, I just don't see him retiring right now. He's been really helping with RFK. He is getting older, but he's only 40. He's got a few years, in my opinion, left. I think the earliest Brad would retire is 2027, 2028. By that point, he'll be 43, 44, and that's kind of the average age where a lot of drivers are retiring currently at the moment. He will be the second oldest full-time owner in the sport as a driver, and I think that he's doing a lot of great things currently at the moment with RFK, trying to build that program up. They're getting a lot better, and I think that if they continue to show improvement, I think that's going to be good for the team overall. So nonetheless, I really hope he sticks around for a long time because I think Brad Keselowski is still a fantastic owner, and I think he's been doing a lot of good things with this team and building up that program over the course of the last couple of seasons. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain versus Kyle Busch. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race last week at Sonoma Raceway, you saw the contact between Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch. And many people were wondering before the contact happened if Kyle Busch was stumbling. Well, according to Kyle Busch's words during the media's availabilities yesterday, Kyle Busch says yes, he was starting to stumble, but basically Ross Chastain just overdrove the corner completely and ran into it. And he also talked about the lack of respect on the racetrack as well, which Kyle Busch is not entirely wrong. With the next-gen car, you do have to race a lot more aggressively and a lot closer. But it also leads to a lot of incidents and a lot of wrecks out on the racetrack, and a lot of drivers end up being very angry and being upset with each other after these races. And we've seen Kyle Busch get frustrated with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at points this year. We got in the fight with Stenhouse. We've also seen, of course, him go up and confront Chris Rebel, which is a former teammate. Maybe in the future we can see Kyle Busch back at JGR. But we know that Kyle Busch has been very frustrated and upset with certain situations this year. And he did, like I said, he stumbled, and he said, had that contact not happened, he likely gets a top 10 and makes it back to the checker flag, or gets a lot closer than he ended up going. I think that's why Kyle Busch was really frustrated and upset with Ross Chastain in regards to that incident and wreck. And I don't blame him for being upset there, right? Because I do think that he is a very great driver still to this day. And Kyle Busch has been very unlucky, just like tonight. He was running extremely well tonight around that top 10 area and would have gotten a lot of points. Instead, he had to basically got involved in that wreck with Kyle Larson and Daniel Suarez, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. And he also, of course, got parts break. Things out of his control that are really not his fault have been taking him out of contention throughout the year so far. It sucks to see, but am I shocked, surprised to see Kyle Busch frustrated a little bit? No, I'm not surprised. These two have had history in the past. You go back to Kona, and I do think it could lead to more issues between both these guys going forward in the not-so-distant future, because it's interesting to see rivalries between two guys. It seems like they really don't care at this point, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Daniel Suarez versus Kyle Larson. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race earlier this evening, you saw the wreck between Kyle Larson and Daniel Suarez. Kyle Larson throughout this event clearly had the fastest car. Granted, Ryan Blaney went on to go get the victory and picked up his first win of 2024 and led 200 laps. But Kyle Larson had a faster car, and Kyle Larson had 4 tires at the time, while Daniel Suarez, I think, had 2 tires or stayed out, and Gragson was on the front row. Kyle Larson actually got a great restart and made a really big dive bomb move into turn number 3 and sent it 3 wide through the middle. Going down the front stretch, Daniel Suarez got a little bit loose, went up the racetrack, and got into Kyle Larson, spinning it out, collecting Denny Hamlin, unfortunately ending Kyle Larson's opportunity and chance to go to victory lane. At the time, I was very frustrated as a Kyle Larson fan to see the wreck and incident, because Daniel Suarez's driver is obviously on the hot seat currently at the moment, and his future is a little uncertain at this particular moment. But after going to see the replay, I think that Suarez didn't really mean to get into Larson. Now, Larson and Suarez both spoke to the media. First, Kyle Larson said that he probably shouldn't have been aggressive, sending it 3 wide through the middle right there, and he probably should have backed out, but he said he definitely got wrecked by Suarez. Daniel Suarez also responded to the situation and wreck, and he said he didn't get to mean to get into Kyle Larson, and it wasn't intentional. Looking at the incident and wreck, there's definitely no doubt that Kyle Larson could have backed out. He was definitely the fastest car. I get it was very difficult to pass at points throughout the race, so I think there were multiple grooves available, and Larson's speed that he showed tonight, I think he seriously would have gone on to win this race for sure tonight before that incident. But also Daniel Suarez, when you're 3 wide, we saw the other drivers be able to be 3 wide in the race, and they had no issues and problems being 3 wide together. So I think it's just a big mistake from Daniel Suarez, and I think he needs to learn from this, especially for a guy. He did get a good finish. I will say Daniel Suarez finished inside the top 10, or got a chance to get a top 5, which he was pretty good throughout the race. There's no denying that. But at the same token, same time, he did struggle and cause some incidents and took Kyle Larson out of the potential win. I wouldn't blame Kyle Larson if he went up in front of him, but they're also Chevy teammates, so I don't think they're going to confront each other about the incident and wreck. Nonetheless, very interesting side for sure. I don't think it's going to lead to anything else, considering Larson will probably be up front a lot more than Daniel Suarez is through the rest of the year. It's no disrespect, but I think that he'll be in a really good position going forward. Larson, meanwhile, Daniel Suarez will probably still, unfortunately, forming at least a little bit mediocre throughout the rest of the year, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Stewart-Haas Racing. As it was reported by Rick Allen on the NBC Sports broadcast on Saturday, and Steven Taranto from CBS commented on this as well, that Stewart-Haas Racing will have an announcement in regards of their Xfinity Series program in the next week or two. Meaning by probably the end of this month, we will know the future of Stewart-Haas Racing's NASCAR Xfinity Series program. We do know that at the end of this year, Stewart-Haas Racing will be shutting down their Cup Series program at the end of the year. That means all 4 drivers at SHR are currently looking for jobs. But there's been a lot of rumors and chatter that Joe Custer in that team could continue in some sort of capacity with some different leadership going into 2025. Now, that does not mean that both Riley Herbst and Cole Custer are going to be the drivers of this team, because there's rumors and speculation that Cole Custer could be in the Cup Series on a full-time basis, whether it is with Front Row Motorsports next season or potentially even a team like the Wood Brothers next year, RFK. That could certainly be a possibility. And Riley Herbst's name is also been brought up as a possibility for Cup Ride. I could see him going to the 21 next year potentially, because he brings a sponsorship and funding to the table. But if both those guys, let's say, go Cup racing next year, who could go to this team? What about a Matt DiBenedetto? Matt DiBenedetto does have a little bit of sponsorship coming in. He's been building up the Viking Motorsports group. I wonder if that could be an avenue there. That could certainly be a shout. What about Hailie Deegan? Hailie Deegan's been struggling in AM racing so far this year, and while I think that she's kind of at fault for the lack of performance this year, I also think the AM racing cars aren't that great. Could we see RSS Racing move in management? Could we see RFK work in the management firm over there? That could certainly be a possibility and shout. I think there will continue. We know their Cup program is to continue. There's been rumors and chatter that the Haas charter could be bought up by Joe Custer, that Ford charter. We don't know who will buy it at this point, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to that. We'll keep an eye on the story as time progresses and goes on, and we'll see what happens to the SHR team, but it looks like the Xfinity program could potentially be continuing in 2025, which is very interesting for sure. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sam Mayer. Now, Sam Mayer, I've already talked about him picking up his second win of the 2024 season. But he's asked questions about his future in NASCAR and why he's not being considered for Cup Series rides. And he actually kind of agreed with Jordan Bianchi. He says it bothers him that he isn't talked about more for Cup Series rides. I kind of agree with Sam Mayer on this. Sam Mayer is a name that I know Bob has mentioned as a potential possibility for a Cup ride in the future, but Sam Mayer is an exceptional talent. In the last 30 Xfinity Series races, he has picked up 6 wins. And in the last 9 or 10 Xfinity Series races, he has had 7 top 4 finishes, with only 2 of those finishes being outside of the top 4. In fact, I think 8 of the last 10, he's finished inside the top 4, which is extremely impressive. He's jumped inside the top 10 of the regular season standings. He struggled early in this season, but Sam Mayer has been doing great. Here's the big problem for Sam Mayer, however. There really aren't a lot of great rides available currently at the moment in the NASCAR Cup Series. Where's he going to go? There's going to be no Hendrick cars available. Kyle Larson signed through 2026. Alex Bowman signed through 26 and probably going to get an extension. William Byron signed through 2025, but he's probably going to get an extension at some time this year. And then Chase Elliott signed through 2027 and likely get another extension as well. Trackhouse isn't going to be available. We know that Ross is signed for a long term. Dale Suarez is expected to get a multi-year extension. And then, of course, SVG is going to potentially be driving full-time in Cup next year. So you don't really have a lot of really great options. RCR could be an option, but we'll talk about why that's not going to be an option here in the near future. To me, Sam Mayer, if Junior Motorsports decides to go Cup Series racing, that could be an avenue and a way for him to move up. But I do agree. I really want to see Sam Mayer in the Cup Series in the future, because I think he's got all the talent and capabilities to do it. I think he'd do an excellent job, and I really hope we do get to see him go Cup Series racing. The problem, like I mentioned, is that it's going to be very hard for him to be a potential candidate for a Cup ride, with there not being a lot of rides lined up and available currently at this particular moment in the NASCAR Cup Series for him. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. Now, people have been wondering where Corey Heim could be going in 2025. There's been a lot of chatter and a lot of rumors that Corey Heim will be full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2025. And some have speculated that Corey Heim could be going to Joe Gibbs Racing next year. However, not so fast. According to Bob Pockers, Corey Heim will likely not be going to Joe Gibbs Racing in any series in the 2025 season. Now, why would he not go to JGR? Because of the beef he has with Ty Gibbs. Both those drivers had a lot of beef and issues in the ARCA series back in 2021, in 2020 as well. They really do not like each other. And I get that they are Toyota teammates, but it still doesn't excuse the fact they really do not like each other out on the racetrack. So that's probably why Corey Heim isn't going there. He would probably be my choice if he was an available prospect to go over there next year. But like I mentioned and said, Corey Heim would not be wildly welcome in the JGR pipeline. So where is Corey Heim going to go if he moves Cup Series Racing? Don't look at 2311 or look at 2311. 2311 Racing is looking to get a third full-time charter. They could even have fourth car that is part-time for Martin Truex Jr. next season. But Corey Heim is being looked at as a candidate for a third 2311 Racing car. Now, Riley Herbst is also being looked for the C. But Corey Heim, in my opinion, will likely end up at 2311. He's been doing an exceptional job in the Truck Series here and was very good in the Xfinity Series race yesterday as well, finishing inside the top 10 and running in the top 10 a majority of that event. In fact, he finished third, as a matter of fact, which is one of the best finishes that Sam Hunt Racing has ever had as a team and an organization. And you look at the performance. 4 wins in trucks this year, is basically on the verge of getting back the regular season points lead. Has just been doing overall an exceptional and a really good job. I think he ends up in a full-time ride at 2311. We're not going to see Carl Edwards or Kurt Busch come out of retirement. I don't think Chandler Smith and Eric Almirola are going to be candidates for that seat. So I think Corey Heim will likely end up in a third full-time entry for 2311 Racing next year, which I think is really good for the team overall. I think Corey's an exceptional talent. I think he's got all the talent in the world to do great things. And I think, like I said, he'll be full-time with 2311 Racing in the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andretti Global. Now, we kind of talked about this on the channel a couple days ago, but Mario Andretti kind of teased the possibility of Andretti potentially coming to NASCAR, and they jokingly talked about the possibility of Mario Andretti and Andretti Global forming up with Dale Jr.'s team and maybe forming Andretti Earnhardt Racing. Obviously, it was kind of a little bit of a joke, but some people took it very, very seriously. Now, obviously, you know that Dale Jr. has been interested in potentially purchasing and acquiring a charter over the course of the last couple of years, but obviously, he said very recently, speaking to Bob Pox about a month ago, that he doesn't plan to purchase a charter currently at the moment, and he's not in the market to buy one of the Stewart-Haas Racing charters. Now looking to get that fourth charter currently at the moment. We do know that Andretti Global is interested in coming to NASCAR. Now, we know they're actively pursuing a way to get into Formula One currently at the moment, but there is a chance and possibly they could get into Formula One if the government finds a way to get approved, though we do know the FIA is also starting to become a little bit against them with the government starting to get involved. But we know that Andretti's been a little interested to come to NASCAR. Now, obviously, back in 2013, they came very close to coming in with Dodge. When Penske announced they'd be leaving Dodge to go to Ford in 2013, they were looking for a team to come in with them, and they were looking to have Andretti and have a team of Kurt Busch and Matt Kenseth. That's why Kurt Busch ended up running the 2014 Indianapolis 500 with Andretti, was because of the fact that they were going to be running in NASCAR, which of course eventually went to Honda after they switched from Chevy to Honda from 2013 to 2014. Now, obviously, I think a lot of us would love to see Andretti come to NASCAR, and a lot of people are looking at Spire, and the big reason is because of that Gamebridge money. The owner of Gamebridge, which is downtown, is a co-owner of Andretti Global. And we obviously know that they've had a big association with Spire. We know that some of the Spire drivers have been on the pit box, not the pit box, their IndyCar guys have been on the pit box for Spire recently. And we do know they've got a big association with Gamebridge. And also a lot of people speculate that this could be the team that switches to Honda. Obviously, with the Andretti connection, it would make a ton of sense, right? It would absolutely make a lot of sense for the team and organization. I really hope we do one day get to see Andretti come to NASCAR, so I think it'd be really huge for the sport. And I think the big team they're going to go with is Spire. Spire's continuing to grow. They're making some big moves currently at the moment, and I think the next big major move is the one, switch over to Honda when they come to NASCAR, but the other big move that I think they're going to make is finding a way to get working with the team and working with the manufacturer going forward, which I think Honda and I think Andretti will partner up with Spire and basically purchase the Spire team in the next couple of years. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson. Now, Noah Gragson is currently looking for a job in NASCAR going into the 2025 season. We know the Stewart-Haas Racing is going to be shutting down altogether at the end of 2025. It was F4, I should say. And he was asked by the media about whether or not he's been looking for a team to go to in 2025. He says he has nothing signed currently for 2025. Now, there's a lot of rides that are currently available going into the 2025 season. And one big benefactor for Noah Gragson is a couple things. One, he has Bass Pro Spot Shops as a sponsor. Bass Pro has been a loyal sponsor for Noah Gragson since he joined Junior Motorsports back in the 2019 season, and they were loyal to him going back Cup racing in 2024. Two, Noah Gragson has been performing at an extremely high level in 2024. He has finished in the top 20 in a lot of races so far. I think to like 7 or 8 races, he's finished inside the top 20 at least. He's coming off having a top 20 finish this past week at Iowa. And he's also been doing a really good job, but at times been the fastest SHR driver and was almost at one point the highest in points for SHR. If not for that big penalty they received early in the year, I think he right now would be in the top 20 in the standings, which going into the year, nobody really expected that. Now, where could Noah Gragson end up in 2025? There are a couple options available. Number one is Joe Gibbs Racing. Obviously, the Bass Pro Shops connection, that could be a big way for him to go there, and he'd be a really good driver to bring in there. Here's the problem. Very similar to Corey Heim, Ty Gibbs does not like Noah Gragson, and Noah Gragson is not a big fan of Ty. Another big reason why I don't think this is going to happen is because Toyota is also not a big fan of Noah Gragson. So I don't think Noah Gragson is going to go to Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, it'd be a great ride to go to, yes, but I don't think he heads to JGR. Another team Noah could go to is Front Row Motorsports. Front Row is going to expand to a 3-car operation in 2024. We do know that Todd Gillen is signed for multiple years. But I don't think Noah ends up here as well. I think Cole Custer and Josh Berry more than likely are going to end up at this seat. He could go to the Wood Brothers, but I don't think that he's going to go to the Wood Brothers. I think the most likely place Noah Gragson is going to end up in 2025 is Richard Childress Racing. There's a couple big reasons. One, it's no secret that Richard Childress Racing is looking to expand to a 3-car operation in 2025. Austin Dillon is signed a multi-year extension recently, and Kyle Busch, we will talk about later in this episode, has also confirmed he'll be back at RCR next year. But a big reason also is because the Bass Pro Shops connection. Like I mentioned earlier, Bass Pro Shops really likes Noah Gragson, and I think they'll go to a 3rd car. I know RCR has been having some issues with their cars recently, but I think that if someone could turn the corner is Noah Gragson. I think they could absolutely handle it, especially if you bring him and some of the people from SHR to really build that group up. I think it'll help. So I think that we're going to see Noah Gragson end up at RCR. Now, he could also end up at 23-11, but again, they're a Toyota team. We know Bubba's going to be signing a multi-year extension here really, really soon. Noah Gragson, I think most likely is going to end up at RCR in 2025 if they get a 3rd charter. If not, Front Row is the other likely option to stay with Ford. But I do think with Ford losing some of the big names, including Stewart-Haas Racing, I think Noah Gragson goes over to Richard Childress Racing in the 2025 Cup season. I think he's going to go over to RCR and drive for them in 2025. I've been pretty high on this. I think this happens in 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. Now, Chase Briscoe also spoke to the media about his 2025 plans, and he still says he's currently working on his 2025 NASCAR Cup plans, but he says he's getting really close to announcing where he's going to be headed in 2025. Now, Chase Briscoe is high on a lot of teams' plans for 2025. In fact, I think he's the biggest name free agent that's currently available at this particular moment. Chase Briscoe has 1 win currently in his Cup Series career at Phoenix, but he's been the best driver at Stewart-Haas Racing so far this year and has got a chance and opportunity to make the playoffs in 2024. And a lot of people are looking at the performance. He's been doing it at SHR since Kevin Harvick left at the end of this past year, and they're looking at the body work he has, and he's done an exceptional job this year. Now, where could Chase Briscoe end up in 2025? Well, Front Row Motorsports is an option since they are a Tier 1 team. We are expecting Front Row to move in to the Stewart-Haas Racing shop or one of the SHR shops in 2025, but I don't know if he ends up there next year because of the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, if Noah Gragson, I think that Josh Berry and Cole Custer most likely end up there in the Cup Series next year. Another option I've heard is the Wood brothers. A lot of people a few weeks ago were linking him to that 21 car. Look, this is no disrespect to Harrison Burton, but Harrison Burton is not cut out to be a Cup Series driver. He has underperformed. I know he got a top 20 this past week at Iowa, but he's been generally not great this year. He's only had 3 or 4 top 20 finishes all season long and has generally not done a great job. In nearly 100 NASCAR Cup Series starts, Harrison Burton only has a whopping 5 top 10 finishes in that 21 car. I think there's a lot of drivers that are better than Harrison Burton. I don't think that 21 car is as bad as people make it out to be. I think that car is a lot better. Matt DiBenedetto got to the playoffs in 2020, nearly got there in 2021. And then, of course, we saw Ryan Blaney do an exceptional job, and Paul Menard even did a better job as well. So I think that this would be a great seat for Chase Briscoe. Plus, he brings Mahindra funding with him, which would be a good reason to go there. But the ride that everybody is linking Chase Briscoe to is Joe Gibbs Racing, and I think this is where it ends up. We do know that Bassford Shops more than likely is leaving Joe Gibbs Racing at the end of this year. Luckily for Chase Briscoe, there's a couple big reasons why I think he goes here. Number one, he's got funding. Mahindra and High Point. They've been loyal to him the last couple of years. Mahindra is very high on him, and they are likely going to go wherever Chase Briscoe ends up. The second reason, I saw someone post this on Twitter. I think apparently Christopher Bell says he knows who his teammate's going to be for next year. And obviously Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe have a really good friendship. Third reason, Kroger is likely going in there in 2025 to be a sponsor because we know that Tad and Jody Scheckter are expected to go over there next year. Meaning that Chase Briscoe isn't going to have to worry about funding as much as other people. So that will help him in a big way. Another big reason is because he's a veteran. Yes, I know he's been in the Cup Series only for 4 years, but Chase Briscoe is almost 30 years old. And you look at the drivers that are available right now, there's not a lot of young veterans, younger drivers available. Like you have Chandler Smith and, of course, Eric Almirola who are options as well. But I think that you're going to end up seeing Chase Briscoe most likely get the seat. Chase is a very talented driver who always gets the best out of equipment, and I think he goes here next year. And I think he'll make the playoffs and win a lot of races. I think he's going to really show what he's capable of. He's a very talented driver. I go back to that Xfinity Series season where he went on to win a bunch of races back in 2020. I think that Chase Briscoe is going to go over to Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2025 season and most likely drive the 19 car or the 18 if they renumber it. And now we're going ahead and jump onto the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch spoke to the media about his future in the NASCAR Cup Series. There's been a lot of rumor speculation at one point about a week or two ago that Kyle Busch, having not had his option year with Richard Childress Racing, that he potentially could have been in line to drive the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing or bring the 18 back for 2025. However, Kyle Busch did speak to the media this past weekend, confirming what Lee Spencer had originally stated, and says that if Hendrick and Gibbs had called him, he would have taken the offer. However, he says he's looking to build up Richard Childress Racing, and it's also confirmed that he will be returning to Richard Childress Racing in 2025. Now, this is very interesting. Kind of interesting comments for sure. The last couple weeks for Kyle Busch have not gone very well. The performance just hasn't been there, to be honest, for Kyle Busch. Well, the performance has been there, but they've been making a lot of mistakes over at RCR that have been costing a chance and opportunity. But Kyle Busch has been the best driver they've had on the legend side of things since Kevin Harvick got over there. The first 15 races that Kyle Busch drove in that seat, he won 3 races. Since then, they've been struggling. And Kyle Busch, like I mentioned, has had some solid runs and some solid performances. But the big problem for Kyle Busch is that, one, Kyle Busch is a lot older of a driver. He will turn 40 next year, and I feel like the performance is starting to fall off just a little bit. Kyle Busch has generally not been gelling very, very well at this team this year because the next-gen car and Kyle Busch just don't seem to go together very well, which is very unfortunate because, like I mentioned and said, Kyle Busch should be doing a lot better in the next-gen era. And he did a lot of great things over Gibbs, but he was struggling in 2022 a little bit, but he still was solid there. Also, RCR's program has taken a major step backwards, at least on the Cup side. The Xfinity side, they're very, very good. But the Cup side right now, they're not as strong. That being said, I think Kyle Busch, at least for 2025, is fully committed to trying to make this work. But what happens at the end of 2025? Could we see Kyle Busch go back to Joe Gibbs Racing? That could be a possibility. Denny Hamlin, we know his contract, from what I understand, only goes through next year. So Denny Hamlin technically will be a free agent or could just retire at the end of 2025. We know that Chase Briscoe is likely going to the 19, so it won't be an option there. Also Hendrick. There's no one else available right now except William Byron, but if they wanted to break out of the clause and bring Kyle Busch in, that could be an option. But Alex Bowman deserves a lot of respect. He's been doing an exceptional job this year for the Sanders, that 48 car, and even being the weakest link, he is still around that top 10 in the points area and has been doing a very solid job and has been extremely consistent. So it'd be disrespectful to get rid of Alex Bowman. But I think about Kyle Busch and the talent he has. I still think Kyle Busch, if he goes back to JGR in the future, I still think he's going to do excellent and do amazing, great things over there. I think that JGR has been one of the fastest organizations, and I think you need veteran experience over there. There's no disrespect to Chris Bell, Ty Gibbs, though Chris Bell will be turning 30 at the end of the year. But you need as much veteran experience as possible because you got to look at that young talent coming up like a Chandler Smith, right, who I think will be in the Cup Series in the not-so-distant future. Again, it's good that Kyle most likely will be returned to RCR. I think ultimately going into the 2025 season, we need to see improvement from Kyle Busch because I think at this point, this year's kind of a wash. I know we're only halfway through the year and there's time to really turn the corner and get better, but it just seems like Kyle Busch is not having fun and it seems like the struggles are really unfortunately affecting him. So I really hope things can get a turnaround really quickly for Kyle Busch so he's not having issues going forward and he can be very competitive for the rest of the year. I think he's also looking to get a win this year, which we know he hasn't won so far this year. He's looking to get a win for the end of the year. He's not the only driver. Bubba also looking for a win this year, and Chase is looking for another win at this point. And also SVG is looking for a Cup win at Chicago in a few weeks. But we'll see how Kyle Busch does for the rest of the year. But as of right now, Kyle Busch will in fact be returning to not Joe Gibbs Racing, to Rich Schultz Racing in the 2025 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, we did a video talking about the subject a couple days ago, but Martin Truex Jr. finally confirmed in a press conference on Friday before Cup cars got on track that he in fact will be retiring from full-time competition at the end of the 2024 season. Martin Truex Jr. has won 34 career NASCAR Cup Series races up to this point. Of course, won the 2016 and 2019 Coca-Cola 600, won the 2016 Southern 500, and he won the Cup Series championship back in 2017. Despite the fact that he's retiring from full-time competition at the end of this year, he still has a really great chance and opportunity to walk off and finish his career, at least on a full-time basis, on a very high note. Martin Truex Jr. had one of the greatest second-half careers of any driver we've ever seen. The first half of his career did not go very well. He struggled for the most part, did not have a lot of great performances, and wasn't doing a great job. But in the second half of his career, since around 2015, he really became a very solid driver. Now, originally when we reported this, however, he said he was retiring altogether. That's not the case. According to Joe Gibbs and what Martin said, he is still going to be around with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025 in some sort of capacity. They plan to be an ambassador for the organization at JGR, and he actually confirmed to Jeff Burton that he's hoping to run around 10 races altogether in the 2025 season in Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series competition. So he could run part-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with JGR with his brother, which I think confirms also that Ryan Truex will be back at JGR in some sort of capacity. Look, you think about the long term of the schedule, right? These schedules are long and gruesome. He's been in the Cup Series for a long time. Let's not forget, he joined the Cup Series at the same time that Denny Hamlin joined, and he also joined around that same time where, Kyle Busch came in not much prior to that. He was a rookie only a year after Kyle Busch was a contender for the Rookie of the Year honors. Now, here's something very interesting to note, and this is mentioned by Denny Hamlin as well. He could run part-time for 2311 Racing in 2025. In fact, Denny Hamlin even said that if Martin Truex Jr. wants to run the Daytona 500, which Martin Truex Jr. wants to win a Daytona 500 before his career officially concludes, he would love to run the Daytona 500 with 2311. And Denny even said that he will have a car available for Martin Truex Jr. if he wants to run the Daytona 500. It's kind of similar to what Bill Elliott did near the end of his career. He kind of started going part-time, or when Terry Labonte kind of ended his career. But Martin Truex Jr., in my opinion, when you look at everything he's been able to accomplish and do in the sport over the years, he's kind of like that quiet reserve driver. And the good thing about this situation is Martin Truex Jr. is not leaving the sport altogether. He still wants to accomplish some things and really be that ambassador for JGR and build that program up, which I think he's going to be a big asset to building JGR and continue to build that up because you've got a really good lineup over there. Now, who is going to be replacing Martin Truex Jr. next year? You obviously have got Chase Briscoe, Noah Gragson, Kyle Busch at one point, and even Corey Heim and Chandler Smith. And Eric Jones been linked to that seat at this point as well. Again, I talked about it a little earlier. I think Chase Briscoe is the most likely candidate to take over that 19 seat next year with the sponsorship and funding back to the table. But Joe Gibbs did reiterate and said that right now they're not planning to look at that. They're going to be looking toward that in the future. But right now the main focus is to talk about Martin's career. I'm also, like I said, though, very glad that Martin is going to be sticking around and being in the series at least on a part-time basis next year. Martin Truex Jr. is still one of the best drivers in Cup to this day, and he's going to hopefully be going out on a high note. He's got a chance this year to go out on a high note and win the Cup Series title. And going back and talking about the possibility of racing part-time with 2311, I think that's a really good opportunity, and it shows that Denny and a lot of people in the garage have a lot of respect for him because I think driving for 2311, it's one of the best organizations in this series, and it's going to be a lot for Denny Hamlin, don't get me wrong, because he's not only going to be fielding one or two cars with Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace, but he's also going to be fielding most likely a third full-time car for Corey Heim or Riley Herbst, and then he's going to be fielding a fourth car for Martin Truex Jr. But I think if anybody's earned the opportunity and chance to drive for 2311 Racing and run part-time with a team, it is definitely Martin Truex Jr. because I think they're both good buddies off the track and they show a lot of respect toward one another in this series. Nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens long term, but I'm just so happy that Martin Truex Jr. gets to go out on his own terms and gets to finish this season, hopefully on a high note. I know the last couple weeks have not gone well for Martin Truex Jr., but I'm glad to see that Martin at least is committed to running at least part-time in the future. I think he's a very good driver still to this day. And like I mentioned, he always does a great job getting the best out of his equipment. So we'll see what happens for the rest of the year. I think Martin's going to win a race for the end of the year. He's had the pace and speed to do it. And I think even his part-time stints in trucks, I think he runs part-time in trucks with Tricon. And I think he runs part-time in Xfinity with JGR, maybe with his brother as a teammate as well. And they work together to go to victory. We'll see what happens in regards to that long term. But as of right now, Martin Truex Jr. will retire from full-time racing, but he will likely run part-time with 2311 Racing in select races, including most likely in the Daytona 500. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think Martin Truex Jr. will drive part-time for 2311 Racing next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what do you think about Kyle Busch returning to RCR? And do you think he should go back to JGR in the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we talk about 10 drivers who could drive the 19 car in 2025. We'll have the Xfinity Series race picks, of course, for New Hampshire, and a news video dropping Wednesday as well. Thursday, I have race picks for the Cup race in New Hampshire, and we got a lot of great content dropping over the course of the next couple days that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.